you are preparing or planning a trip to Vietnam and want to know best practices before your visit, this video has you covered. Hi, my name is Grace and I solo traveled all across Southeast Asia for 7 months. I spent about a month traveling from the central to northern part of Vietnam, leaving it as my favorite country to travel to in Southeast Asia. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you my top travel tips when traveling over to Vietnam and things that you should know before your visit. Before anything, first things first, that before heading over to Vietnam, you do need a visa to enter. Out of all the countries that I visited in Southeast Asia, trying to get my Vietnam visa took the most time. Most countries that I visited, such as Cambodia, Thailand, Indonesia, I was able to get my visa pretty quickly, but Vietnam was the only one where I had to wait a couple of days to get. I did wait no more than 3 days to get, and I've heard mixed opinions on getting visa upon arrival. I've met some people in Vietnam who said that they got visa upon arrival, but it was also during COVID, so I'm not entirely sure if they tightened up the rules. As a US citizen, I was only allowed to stay in Vietnam with an e-visa for up to 30 days. But you do also want to note that your visa doesn't start from the day you enter into the country. Your visa actually starts from the day that you say that you're going to enter the country when filling out the application. So on my actual application, I said that I was going to arrive into Vietnam on a Monday, but I actually got there the following Wednesday. So my visa didn't start from that Wednesday. It started off from the Monday date of when I filled in the application. When I was in Vietnam, I was actually also trying to extend my visa as well, but it was the most difficult thing in the world. Maybe it was because it was during COVID, but they just didn't let me extend my visa. The second tip, and this is just from a personal preference, but when you fly into Vietnam, most likely you're going to be flying into Saigon, and that is the most popular airport that people usually fly into when entering the country. But I would highly recommend that you starting from the north. So I actually did start from Ho Chi Minh City, which is around central Vietnam, and I made my way up north. But by the time I went up north, I ran out of time and I did not even get a chance to go down to the south. If you are starting in Ho Chi Minh City, I would recommend you staying there either for a long weekend or for about 2 to 3 days, just so that you can get familiarized with the country, to get used to the culture and to understand currencies as well. What I actually usually do when I go to any country, that I'll try to go to the most popular city and I'll try to ask as many questions with all the locals, get their advice, their opinions, because they're gonna know best. The next tip. Get ready for a lot of traffic and a lot of honking. Honking and traffic in Vietnam is something else. I've heard the most honking in my entire life in Ho Chi Minh City. I actually did end up renting a motorbike in Vietnam, and I totally get and I understand why people honk all the time. Instead of giving signals on your bike, people honk to let other drivers know that you're on their way. And I will say too that when I did rent out a bike, I found myself honking, but I totally understand why there's so much honking going on. And it's actually not as crazy as you might think once you're riding the motorbike. In a weird way, it's like very controlled traffic, but if you are walking, to look both ways and just to make sure of your safety, because it does get a little hectic over there. Aside from all the honking, that if you are walking, you want to make sure that you don't have your cell phone out in the open, because cities such as Ho Chi Minh City are very known for motorbike pickpocketers. So don't put your phone out while you're walking around or crossing the street, because there's a high chance that you might be pickpocketed. So the next tip. Now, all across Vietnam, I will say that the transportation there is so amazing. It is freaking on point, and I've had no problem trying to get around anywhere. If you are familiar and if you've been to other countries within Southeast Asia, you know that Grab is the most popular ride-sharing app there. But along with this, if you are trying to look to go into other cities, that there are sleeper buses that go from every major city in Vietnam. Vietnam is such a long country that when I actually got up to Hanoi from Ho Chi Minh City, I flew there instead. And I flew quite a bit in Vietnam because the flights are just so cheap, and I'd rather spend a little bit more money and save so much more time. I think at that time I was in Vietnam, my luggage weighed about 20 22 kilos and I couldn't have spent more than $15 on checked-in luggage. Leading me up to my next tip is that if you are planning on flying and traveling to other cities within Vietnam, which you should, I would highly recommend that you either book your tickets in advance or that you travel on weekdays, because on the weekends, people in Vietnam love to travel in their own country, which I do find amazing, but it can get quite hectic. And I will say that the busiest I've seen an airport was actually in Ho Chi Minh City. This is the craziest I've ever seen an airport. Just look. Oh my God. Wow, where am I? The next tip is that when you are traveling in Vietnam, obviously you want to have enough cash. So if you guys don't know already, you know how much I love my credit cards and my credit card points, and that's actually how I've been able to live for free for 6 months in Southeast Asia. I mean, that could honestly just be another video in itself, but in Vietnam, I was not able to rack up my points. And obviously if you go to higher scale restaurants, that you will have more of the leverage to use your credit cards there. But because everything is also so cheap there, a lot of small businesses actually prefer not to have to pay the additional credit card merchant fees. But just have enough cash with you at all times. In my personal opinion, Vietnam was the cheapest country that I've traveled to in Southeast Asia. I mean, granted, all the countries were really cheap, but I found things to be wildly cheaper over there. I had my Charles Schwab debit card with me, and they are not sponsoring this video and I do not earn an affiliate link with them, but I highly recommend that you get this card because I was not charged foreign transaction fees or an ATM fee. The next tip is that when you are traveling Vietnam, and honestly, any country that you go to, I think it's really important to learn the basics of the country's language. Personally, I didn't really have a problem with trying to get around, or there were specific language barriers because a lot of people knew some English, which really helped. But what's also really amazing in Vietnam is that Google Translate works really damn well. I know there are some countries, for example, like in Korea, Google Translate is just sometimes off. The next thing to know is that before going to Vietnam, I had actually assumed that Vietnam was going to be a lot more rural. There are definitely a lot of parts where there are a lot of rural areas, but Vietnam is actually a lot more developed than I had expected to be. Ho Chi Minh City was definitely the most developed, and there were actually a lot of skyscrapers and buildings. The other thing too, and I have to bring this up because I'm Korean, but there were so many Koreans in Vietnam. Like every other corner I turned, there was at least one other person speaking Korean. And I was like, am I in Korea? And it's not like it was a bad thing, but I think it was just more of a shock. And I was confused. And they actually had a lotte mart in Hanoi. And the more I went up north, it almost seemed as if there were more Korean tourists there, and I was a lot more confused that way, but they're just everywhere. We're everywhere. Next tip, don't expect there to be convenience stores everywhere. Yes, there are convenience stores such as Circle K, Vinmart, Family Mart, but there wasn't as many convenience stores as opposed to in Thailand, where you'll literally find 2 7-Elevens on the same block. Although in Vietnam, there were a lot of more family-owned convenience stores, and I kind of almost like that better because that's where I bought most of my water, my goodies, and I tried out different types of Vietnam snacks from those local family-owned businesses. I swear to you, the people there were so freaking nice. Everyone there was so kind, and okay, I will say, all across Southeast Asia, the people there were so damn nice. Everyone there was so nice, but here, I don't know, it's like people were just even nicer and more willing to help me out, me, like a stranger. When I first got over to Vietnam, I stayed in this hotel for about a week. Hi Mary, if you're watching this. She helped me out so much, and she knew I was by myself, so she just like, she took in my WhatsApp and she made sure that I was safe, what I was doing every day. I was like, you're so nice to me. Why are you so nice? So guys, If you guys are in Ho Chi Minh City and if you guys like to party, near Bien Street is where you'll find Mary Line 2. When I was also in Hanoi, I stayed at this one hotel and I was bouncing around from Hanoi over to Sapa, Ninh Binh, and Long Bay, and they let me leave in my stuff in the hotel when I was traveling to places. So I just felt like people took care of me really well. And all these people, I will leave their information, contacts, hotels in the link description below. Come on, see you on 10. All right, so I just called my Grab car and I'm on my way over to the bus stop. So actually, I'm planning on heading over to Long Bay for 3 days. And then I'm actually coming back to Hanoi for 1 day. But this hotel, they're so good to me. They agreed to just keep my stuff until I come back. This has probably got to be my favorite one, but you guys know that whenever I travel to countries, I look for coffee shops, cafes, coffee shops, just everything around, because it's just a huge part of who I am. Coffee is a universal language, and Vietnam emphasizes so much on coffee. Their coffee culture is amazing. Early in the morning, you'll notice that any city that you go to in Vietnam, you'll find people just in groups drinking coffees in their small chairs outside. It's really beautiful. And I was told that a lot of people, when they want to start off their day, they actually drink coffee with their friends or just go by themselves, relax, and then they start their workday, which is the complete opposite of what I grew up with, because over in New York City, nobody got time to sit down. Everybody is in a rush. Everybody's trying to get from point A to point B as fast as they can. So going over to Vietnam, it was just a culture shock, and it was a 180 for me, but I absolutely loved it. And I would purposely wake up earlier just so that I could experience the full-on coffee culture. It just made me feel so good. I personally think that some of the best food I've had in Southeast Asia was in Vietnam. Okay, and this is just an opinion, just me, but food all around Southeast Asia was damn amazing. Every country had their own little taste to it, but I think why I really vibed with Vietnam's food is because there was a lot of vegetables for every dish. I just felt really good and healthy while I was traveling all throughout Vietnam. I didn't realize the variety of Vietnamese dishes and food that was there. My favorite, my absolute favorite, is bun cha. Bun cha, I had at least 3 to 4 times a week until I left because it was just so damn good. And also, yes, there's a reason why Anthony Bourdain has hyped up so many restaurants, because they are actually that good. The next tip is that if you do plan on renting a motorbike, to note that if you are planning on parking your bike at places, that you do usually have to pay for parking. So when I did rent out my bike in Da Nang, every single stop that I went to, I had to pay. When I was in Hoi An, I had to pay for parking. I couldn't just randomly park on the streets. Finding parking is not that hard, but you just have to make sure with your hotels or the area or a parking lot that you can park there. I'm gonna put my camera away because I don't trust myself vlogging while riding the bike. Safety first. The one thing that I really loved about Vietnam, although sometimes it was kind of annoying, was that it rained all the time. So if you are visiting Vietnam during rainy seasons, which is between June and November, to always have a raincoat around with you. I'm not lying. The amount of times that it's rained when I was in Vietnam is just too many to count, especially in Ho Chi Minh City. But Ho Chi Minh City rained even more than other parts of Vietnam, at least twice a day. So when you're there, you just never know with the rain. And although convenience stores do sell rain jackets, don't be surprised if they run out, because people buy them all the time. So I personally kept 2, one in my backpack and one in my luggage, and it was a lifesaver. You guys cannot see, but this is the view from inside my rain jacket. Depending on how long you're actually planning on staying in Vietnam, to try not to rush your time there. From a mixture of city to just nature and landscapes, I can find myself living there just all alone for like half a year. That is the first country I'd probably go back to if I went over to Southeast Asia again. So depending if you are there for a week or a few days, again, I would probably start off in Ho Chi Minh City just to get yourself familiarized and then go up north, but try not to make it a goal to see everything. Although it was really convenient that from Hanoi, they had tour buses that just took care of you and would pick you up at your hotels, and you can do day tours. I did a day tour to Ninh Binh. Ninh Binh is a place where I wish I had at least 2 days in, but if you have limited time like that, it's really nice where tour buses will just take care of you like that. So the final tip is that there are so many places to go to in Vietnam. I can make an entire video on the best places to go to in Vietnam. But when you are visiting places like Long Bay, do not forget about Cat Ba Island. I am telling you, Cat Ba Island is so underrated. It is so exclusive and it is a really beautiful, beautiful island. I'm so happy that I got stuck in Cat Ba Island because it forced me to explore more of the area, and I swear if I had a little bit more hygiene and a little bit more of my stuff, I probably would have stayed there for a little bit more. I don't have too much battery and I need to save it and concentrate on the hike. Okay, there's 2 intersections already. I don't know which one to go to. So overall, these are my top tips on traveling over to Vietnam. And again, I can't have favorites, but Vietnam was my favorite country in Southeast Asia. But also I think Vietnam has a even bigger and special place in my heart because that's where I started to make my YouTube videos. I wish I can do it over and over and over again, and I would totally do it solo again. Although now I think it's time to find a partner to do this traveling life with. So if you guys have any more questions, leave those in the comment section below and I'll do my best to respond back to everybody. But with all of this being said, if you guys haven't done so already, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe onto this channel for more travel vlogs like this. And I will see you guys in the next video. Safe and happy travels, y'all.